That's Aaron Miller from Mountain Grove. Thank you, Aaron. His grandparents are responsible for us having a Weber Falls Historical Society Museum, for us being able to pull this event off today, and a number of other things around here. My name's Troy Wayne Poteet. This is my hometown for all of you Trail of Tears folks. For you locals, I'm the executive director of the Trail of Tears Association. I want to take just a minute to answer some questions I've been getting, and they say, what is this all about? A local guy said to me, and I said, well, we're marking the place where the last detachment that came on the Trail of Tears stopped on the water. They were supposed to go to Fort Gibson. There was a set of falls right out there in the river that stopped boat traffic a lot of the year anyway. The records say they got to mouth of Illinois. Lots of records say Weber's Falls near mouth of Illinois. Weber's Falls at the mouth of Illinois. We know it's just around that point that the boat got that far. So what these signs commemorate and tell the story about is that last group of the forced removal. The Trail of Tears Association is a national group with chapters. Can you guys hear me in the back there, Carol? Okay. It's a national group. There's a chapter in each of the 9 states through which the Trail of Tears passed. Their purpose is to back up and help the National Park Service carry out their congressional mandate. And that mandate is mark the forced removal route of the Cherokee Nation. We weren't the only tribe removed, but ours was the best publicized. It was the largest, the biggest mess probably of all the removals. And so that's the one that Congress decided to mark. We tell the story of the other 4 tribes, of the 5 civilized tribes, in the process of telling our story. But the official route is the Cherokee route. And so these volunteers, and they're like me, folks. They're history nerds, is what I call us. They're volunteers that get around and they do the hard research to figure out exactly where did the trail come, where did it stop, where did they camp, and so all along that route from the southeast to here, there are markers like you're going to see that tell this story of what happened to the Cherokee people. Now, I'm a Cherokee citizen. I don't speak for all Cherokees because any fool that purports to do that is going to get somebody to say, no, that old fool doesn't speak for me. That ain't what I think. But I'll tell you, I've been around Cherokees from every strata for most of my life, and this is something almost everybody agrees on, and it's this. We don't commemorate that forced removal because we want to capture our ancestors in the role of victims. And certainly they were mistreated and they were victimized. And we sure don't do it because somehow we want to be victims and appropriate that victimization to ourselves. No, we do this because every time we have an event like this, and we have events like we're having here all across the country, all across the Southeast, where people come together, we do it because it's an opportunity for us to say the Cherokee Nation, Cherokee people, are tenacious and resilient and resourceful, and we're survivors, and we're still here. So that's what this is about. Now, we're going to get a proper official welcome in a minute, but since we got so many people from out of town, I'm going to take this opportunity, and I'm going to miss somebody, but I'm going to do my best. Let me just say this. If you are a board member of the National Trail of Tears Association, could you stand up or wave right now? And I see them from where the water route started at Ross's Landing in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Cleta T. Townsend. Ask me what T stands for. Ann Rogers from North Carolina. Anita Finger Smith, our speaker in a little while, from North Carolina. There she is back there. Vicki Rosamond, Tennessee chapter. Lori Broughton from Alabama, but she doesn't live in Alabama. She makes a lot of trips to help do this work. Now, who did I miss out there among the national board members? Just going to say, yeah, there's Sasha Bowles from the Arkansas Department of Natural Resources. She takes care of a historic site in Arkansas. We've got a lot of learned, talented people in the Trail of Tears Association. I just wanted y'all to know that they have all joined us here today. Shirley Mildred Taylor from Salisaw served for years on the Trail of Tears Association, and she's right back there. From Marble City, Ashoke, and right next to her is that Shirley Lawrence, longtime board member. And I want to tell you what, when it's published, it better be right, because if it's not, you'll get corrected. All right, that's enough of that. I'm going to ask the mayor to give you all an official welcome. Mayor Frank Anderson from the city of Weathers Falls, who made it his business to make sure we had a hard surface to stand on here.
Thank you. I'd like to thank each and every one that took the time out of their day to come and see our little community. And remember, there's a lot of history around this little town of Weathers Falls, and I ask you, each one of you, to drive through our park and enjoy what we have here and enjoy the deal today. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Thanks for all the effort to, I think George may recognize some of the volunteers that got busy and got this done. And now, I've always thought that the Lord hears better in Cherokee, but that's probably not scriptural or anything. I'm going to ask the local Cherokee church is 10 miles south of town or something like that. It's called Oak Grove. It's way down the river, almost the mouth of Canadian. And I'm going to ask the pastor of that church, and I'm going to bring the microphone to him so he doesn't have to walk up here, and his interpreter might be here. You guys want to give a see if you can invoke the blessing of the Creator on this situation.
Appreciate that, Floyd. Let's all bow our heads. Gracious Father, we just come before you this beautiful afternoon, this time that you've given us to be here in Weber's Falls in the park, Heavenly Father. We just ask your blessing upon each person who's traveled through such time and into this effort of these signs, Heavenly Father, so that our history can be told. Father, we just thank you for all your many blessings, and we thank you for the blessings of the Cherokee people, Heavenly Father, that you blessed us all with. And Father, we know that we are one nation under God, and we just thank you and give you the praise and glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Henry, you want to come interpret that into Cherokee? Henry Birdtail.
Speaking of Oak Grove, that Alexander you know there into the way you came out on from a dark blue so now you really pick up the stand in the line. It's the Nala and the brother God is so nice. Nothing is God so also so nice. To the neglect of safety, we know are not to go to heroes, so go in the roads of heroes. That's our not only to go into without a hundred dollars, without saying we hundred dollars or they don't want $100, about only $40. You know, they don't only power this is not really stingers, it's going on a low table. It only gets to go in that. I know the doctor, that's our road. It's a lot of you. God knows it's a lot of children. God's our that only to make it. It's not there's a don't Amen.
Well, don't, Henry. Still, you don't. No. Dawaju, Cage, Glow Cage, Doday Chito, Choco. They're going to sing, you guys, in Cherokee. What are y'all going to do? Amazing Grace, the unofficial Cherokee national anthem. Thank you, Still Sisters. You're going to do another one after a while, y'all. y'all want to hear two, we better tell them now, see if they can get one worked up right quick. I want to bring the cameraman up right now, George Miller. He's not going to bring his wife, Linda, who's also known as Little Woman in some circles. And between the two of them, they run the Webbers Falls Museum. And they planned this, and they filmed the Trail of Tears conferences and another bunch of stuff. George, come and have something to say.
But very little.
As much as you want.
Oh, the only got it. My Cherokee teacher is right there, and if I get anything wrong in Cherokee, it's her fault. Okay. I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm George Miller, the president of the Weber Falls Historical Society and the museum. And my wife, Linda, stand over here with us, raise your hand. She's the backbone of the Weber Falls Museum. And she keeps me straight most of the time. I have my notes. I don't want to miss nobody. I want to thank the city workers who poured this concrete, or who helped pour it, and I can't see the guy that actually finished it. He was here a while ago, but I want to thank him and the mayor, Frank Anderson, our county commissioner, Steve Wright. I had to think your name there, Steve. I'm sorry about that. And Junior Smith, our junior back here, is our Cherokee council for this district. And okay, that's all I had to say. We want you all to come to the down to the museum when this is all over, to the next door there, to listen to Miss Fingersmith there tell us a story.
Thank you, George. Yeah, now I'm going to ask the guy that is the head of the Long Distance Trails Office for the National Park Service. He's headquartered in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He has to kind of superintend the Pony Express Trail, I think, and the Oregon-California Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, the El Camino Real, and I can't remember what else. He's got a lot of responsibilities, but he's got a lot of good help. Carol Clark, the genius behind the design of signs, she's right in the back, and she's dressed like a Park Service person. Wave, Carol. She's park ranger and interpretive specialist. Aaron, you want to come?
Good afternoon, everybody. All right. Hey, this is wonderful. As I was telling the mayor just a few minutes ago, this is a fantastic turnout. I bet we've doubled the population of Weber Falls today, haven't we? This is really fantastic. It's great to see this type of support and this interest, and to come out on a beautiful day like this. Thank you so much for the invitation. It was wonderful, and it's just nice to see this type of fellowship and this type of support for such an important event. Troy mentioned Carol Clark. You'll recognize Carol because she's honored us with the uniform of the National Park Service, but she played a real important role in putting these together. And Troy was being a little modest, but Troy was also a very important part of this in helping us to tell the story and convey that story that the Cherokee wanted to see told here, and that the city supported also. So there's a lot of people that went into making this a reality, and that's a really important part of this. A lot of people are going to say thanks, but that's really important because what you're seeing here, and I hope everybody does get a chance to come up here and read these, because they really are a significant story, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But the real important thing is that we've got so many people that came together to do something like this. You see 3 little signs here, and you think that that's a real easy thing to do, but in fact it really isn't, because it It means a lot of people coming together, talking about the story, identifying what's important, what they want to tell the public, what they want to tell children that come here to learn, and to the rest of the public that come here to learn and want to experience the story and stand in the footsteps of the original settlers that were here back in the 1820s and 1830s. That's complex. It's a real tough assignment, and a lot of people came together to do that. Not just telling the story, finding the images, finding the right way to convey to people what that story is, purchasing the materials, laying the concrete. I mean, it just goes on and on, the type of activities that went into putting something like this together. I hope you do get a chance to read the panels here, because they really are significant, and it's such a wonderful thing to find a site like this where you can tell a story that has so many different facets to it and has such an opportunity to talk not just about settlement and removal, but also to talk about rebirth, to talk about the reestablishment, the redefinition of the Cherokee Nation. We have that opportunity here. We have a beautiful location, but we also have the opportunity to talk about what the river looked like 150 years ago, 200 years ago, because it must have been a spectacular sight to see the falls here. We have that opportunity to talk about why this brought people, why the environment brought people to this area. One of the panels talks about that. Another panel talks about the survival of the nation, why the nation came here, why the Cherokee came here, even before the forced removal, during the troubled relocation of the Cherokee in the 1810s and the 1820s, why people settled in this area, why Walter Weber came here and chose this area to be a critical junction for communication and trade and settlement and economic vitality. And then it tells a story about the removal itself. And that story here is particularly important because this was the last detachment of Cherokee that settled here. The last detachment of Cherokee that came and settled or disbanded here and then moved on up to Tahlequah. So you have that opportunity to tell a very rounded story, and it's not that common. You find those types of locations where you can tell that story and celebrate the survival and the rebirth and the expansion of the Cherokee Nation. So this site, this story, these panels represent so much more than just a simple little location along the Trail of Tears and a site in the Cherokee Nation. And I think we can all take pride in knowing that so many people played a role in that. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today, and enjoy the beautiful day.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for being here. I think I could move up here a little closer. You all, the guy I'm going to bring up next is, he wears a number of hats. I just wonder his head doesn't spin around. He was a tribal councilman for many, many years, and this program says that he is the president of the Trail of Tears Association, which is true. He's also president for life of the Going Snake District Historical Society. And then he's a head of a little group. They have a little museum in Oklahoma City over there by the Capitol, the Oklahoma Historical Society. He's the president of that group. Jack, could you come up here and put on one of your hats and talk to folks at Weber's Falls? He's the favorite son of Chewy, Oklahoma.
Thanks, Troy. I'm glad he mentioned my hometown of Chewy, which just go right up the Illinois River, about 40 or 50 miles, and you'll be there. I was born there on my grandfather's allotment, with the Illinois River going right through it. But it is a pleasure to be here today. Like the previous speakers, I want to express my appreciation to all the people involved in this project, particularly the City of Weber Falls and the National Park Service. And it's fitting that we have the markers here, not only at the site of the last, near where the last detachment came in and moved on to Tahlequah, but it also tells about the old settlers who were already here and founded the city of Weber Falls. So, but it's all significant because this is the place where we started rebuilding our Cherokee Nation. The immigrant Cherokees, as the ones who came to the Trail of Tears were known, and the old settler Cherokees reached an agreement, an act of union in August of 1839, and that paved the way for a new constitution that was approved in early September of 1839, which is what we celebrate at our Cherokee National Holiday on Labor Day weekend. So it is that we came together and we did rebuild our nation, and our nation still exists today. It's thriving. And I'm glad to see all of our Cherokee citizens here today, as well as all of our other guests from around the country. But once again, thanks for all the work that went into this. I appreciate everyone's effort to see that these signs are put out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Did I mention Jack's mother was born on the Talentesky Courthouse grounds? That's just right up the.
And I have lots of family buried.
Yeah, his family are all over in the Still Cemetery at.
Well, actually, Gore Cemetery and the old cemetery. That's right on the river back behind it.
Yeah, there's two over there. One's hidden. Junior Smith, he's almost a hometown boy. His mama's from Weber's Falls. His granny lived next to my granny. He's our new council member for this district. I don't know what number it is. Thank you, Junior, for coming.
Spent many a day over here planting these big trees. I'm E.O. Junior Smith. You're in Tribal District 5. Tribal District 5 starts in the middle of Salisaw, goes up the Cherokee Line, Paradise Hill, 10 miles past Bragg's, come back by Ross Road, back down south all the way to the river. It's a crowded area, but I'm just real happy to do that. I think I come on board. I'm one of the new councilmen, so I come on board at the right time. We got some exciting things coming up. I'm very, very excited to do this. But Weber is a town that is full of history, really great people. I was reading these earlier, and it's great. I would urge you, either today or come back sometime and go to this museum up here. It's one of the best little museums you're ever going to see. I'll be around today. Got any questions or anything I can do to help, call me. But I'll be here, just glad to be here, and y'all enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Junior. Steve, you want to come say something? You're sure welcome to Muscogee County District 2 Commissioner Steve Wright. Helped get the rebar, and I don't know what else he done, but a lot.
That's about all I did was get rebar. But anyway, thank y'all. It's a beautiful day, and if you hadn't read these, you need to read them. It tells a lot of history on itself too. And other than that, Troy, I guess that's about all I can say.
Thank you for coming and for helping get this thing together in short order. Still, Unky Don, Jalaki, Cage, Dawn, they don't let you know Jalaki, Shirley. And what y'all gonna sing this time? Guide me, Jehovah. You want me to hold the mic?
Swatini says the Yehovah Eladiga Isayi Chiwana Gali Uaya Jalanini Dini Stelis, Hoy desde Slostana Nigo Hila Stelis Kala sina you would lie, Jodani Ueya Skio Histanella Buno, Aguilinis Discayi Ski Stelis, Toby Desi Sostana Nigo Hila, Toda Kano Istani.
Y'all, that concludes this portion of today's activities. But I encourage all of you to go right up the street to Showtime at the Falls, right next door to the museum on the corner. Linda Miller and the Weber Falls Historical Society, the ladies have prepared a reception with snacks and what have you. And in a little while, Anita Finger-Smith is going to clear up the misconceptions that most of us have had that all of our cousins in the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians were people who ran off and escaped the removal. That's not really so, and she knows all about it, and you can understand it when she gets done telling you. Thanks everybody for coming. Is there anything else that needs to be said before we adjourn these proceedings? Thanks all of you for coming out and participating in this. We'll do something again pretty soon. Thanks a bunch. Thank you. She's very active in the North Carolina chapter activities besides being active on the national board. So it's a great deal for her to be at Weber's Falls and to talk about this. She did this at a conference not too long ago, and we missed being able to tape the thing. And so today I think George is going to capture it on tape. Addresses like she's going to give today are available on the National Trail of Tears Association website. Look for, it'll probably be next spring before we get it up there, but if you need to refer back to it, Anita, come along and give your address. This is going to be fun. I learned more in about 40 minutes one day than I ever knew before, and I've been reading Cherokee history all my life.
I guess first thing we can do is another mic test. Really? Okay. And I guess you noticed we were having some technical difficulties. So I hope everything holds together for this talk. And if y'all know Troy Wayne, you know that he embellishes quite a bit on what he says. And so don't believe everything he just told you about. It might not all be true. And I've never worn one of these in my ear and mouth, so we hope that goes well. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. The widely held belief that today's Eastern Cherokee are descendants of those who fled to the mountains and eluded federal troops in 1838 is a distortion and an oversimplification of a very complex episode in Cherokee history. During this talk, I will cover 5 circumstances during the early 19th century that contributed to the nucleus of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Hopefully this presentation will clear up some of the misconceptions as to why the North Carolina Cherokee remained in the East after the forced removal of other Cherokees to lands west of the Mississippi. But first, I want to introduce you to the historical periods assigned by the federal government as they relate to the North Carolina Cherokee. Keeping in mind, the North Carolina historical periods are fairly well aligned to those of the rest of the old Cherokee Nation as a whole. Excuse me. The contact period, the colonial period, the federal period, the nationalist period, and the removal period. During what's referred to as the contact period from 1670 to 1710, which was prior to extended contact with Europeans, the North Carolina Cherokee formed a relatively egalitarian, communalistic society which was economically dependent upon corn, beans, and squash. These three food staples were supplemented by hunting and wild food gathering. This simply means they were living in communities, aiming for equal means for all their people by growing, hunting, and gathering. As shown in this artist's rendition from the National Geographic documentary 500 Nations, Cherokee settlement patterns were varied with individual farmsteads, small villages, and clustered towns. Towns were defined by the presence of a townhouse or public building, and that would have been here, a townhouse or a public building, which was the focal point of civil, political, and religious activity. Summer and winter homes ringed a central plaza that was used for ceremonies, dances, and games. And this artist's rendition was of the old town of Chota in the Overhill Towns. During the 18th century, the Cherokee people inhabited land over parts of what are now current-day North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. They also claimed parts of what is now Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia as their hunting grounds. So if you'll take a look at this map, by the way, this map was done, and several of my maps were done by Lamar Marshall. He is an excellent map maker, and he's very willing to help us out with maps. So if you'll kind of look at this horizontal line here, you can kind of use that as a judge. Anything above that line would have been hunting grounds. There would have not been permanent villages above that line. There might have been temporary shelters to get the Cherokee through a winter hunting season. I have outlined North Carolina, since that is the focal point of today's talk. And the red dot is the current day town of Cherokee, North Carolina. The Cherokee did share this hunting ground peacefully over in this area with the Chickasaw. And they shared an area over in here, not quite so peacefully, with the Shawnees. The villages, the towns of the Cherokee would have been further south below what would be that horizontal line. Unfortunately, there were very few records kept of the Cherokee people prior to their relationship with the United States. Most written accounts of this time were available from diaries and journals of non-Indian explorers. So let's move on to the colonial period, ranging from 1710 to 1785. Town clusters within the Cherokee Nation were described mainly by river drainage systems. These included the lower towns along the upper Savannah River and its territories, the overhill towns along the upper Tennessee and lower Tennessee River valleys. The North Carolina settlements for the Cherokee were designated as the outtowns, the middle towns, and the valley towns. The valley towns were along the upper Hiawassee, Nantahala, and Valley rivers. The middle towns were situated along the Little Tennessee River drainage basin, and the outtown settlements were along the Oconaluftee and Tuckasegee rivers. The outtowns were the location of what is now the current Qualla boundary, commonly referred to as the Cherokee Indian Reservation. By the way, this map was done by Dr. Brett Riggs, a Cherokee historian, that North Carolina would not be where it is as a Trail of Tears chapter without him. During the first quarter of the 18th century, English traders provided the North Carolina Cherokee with manufactured goods such as guns, ammunition, hoes, axes, knives, belts, cloth, scissors, and alcoholic spirits in exchange for deer hides and fur pelts. The dragon canoe was from the overhill towns. in Tennessee, and my topic today is North Carolina Cherokee. I like this depiction of dragon canoe. It shows some of the trade items, trade cloth, trade beads, and trade silver, bartered during the colonial period with the settlers. This depiction of dragon canoe is part of an exhibit at the Sycamore Shoals State Park in Elizabethton, Tennessee. In addition to trade goods, the North Carolina Cherokee adopted numerous material aspects of Anglo-American society, including incorporating the concept of stacked horizontal logs, peaked roofs, and chimneys. This graphic is a homestead depiction of lined fish in the early 1830s in northern Georgia. With more and more European settlers arriving in the area, by the end of the colonial period, the Cherokee tribe had lost over half its vast homeland through a series of treaties. And over half of its people had died from diseases such as smallpox. So, looking at this map that I used earlier, the red line is the original Cherokee claims in 1700. And by the end of the colonial period, the Cherokee Nation now is the size of the blue border. Those little lines that are very difficult to see are current-day counties overlaid onto this map. It is a very valuable map. It is an excellent map to use. And if at any time you're interested in a copy of this map, I'll be glad to supply it with you if you will email me. Or any of the maps. My email will be on the last slide of the PowerPoint. The federal period from 1785 through 1820 was an era of rapid change for much of the Cherokee Nation throughout the Southeast. The first 2 decades of the 19th century witnessed attempts by the Americans to civilize the Cherokees. An economic and social change of the Cherokees was led by the mixed bloods in the Overhill and the Lower Town settlers, while the valley, middle, and out towns of North Carolina were much less affected by contact with and pressures from the Anglo-Americans. This was based largely on their geographic isolation. This region contained a larger portion of full-bloods, less wealth, and less exposure to Christianity than most of the remainder of the Cherokee Nation. In 1808, George Barber Davis was hired by Colonel Return Jonathan Meigs, the United States agent to the Cherokee, to record a census of the Cherokee Nation. Davis, speaking about the Cherokee towns in North Carolina, stated, "I had no idea that there was such Indians as there are over the hills and in the valleys. They are at least 20 years behind the rest of the nation." Beginning in 1816, many Cherokees who disagreed with how to deal with the Americans and their land cessions voluntarily enrolled themselves to move west. By the 1820s, several thousand Cherokees had voluntarily located in present-day Arkansas and Oklahoma, and how appropriate that this is where we are today, talking about that down the river. The settlement pattern, as it was known for the North Carolina Cherokee, was about to change dramatically. In 1817 and 1819, treaties were signed between the United States and the Cherokee to compensate for the large area of land that the United States made available for those Cherokee who had moved west. The region around the middle and out towns were included in this cession. So the red line is the treaty line in North Carolina. If those of you who have been to Cherokee, North Carolina, to put that treaty line on the landscape between Bryson City and Nantahala Gorge, there is a ridge today that is called the Treaty Ridge. Currently, there is a BP station sitting there. So if you run into that BP station, you will know that that is the Treaty Ridge. The green outline shows the North Carolina lands, in the Cherokee lands in North Carolina prior to the Treaty of 1817 and 1819. The red, again, shows the location of the treaty in North Carolina, showing that the Valley towns are the only remaining towns in the Cherokee Nation at this point in time. The 1809 Med census of the entire Cherokee Nation totaled 12,395, while his census only counted 1,065 Cherokee who were enumerated in the middle and out towns. Now this is before the treaty. So there was 1,065 Cherokee living in the middle and out towns. This would indicate that there were 1,065 North Carolina who are living outside of the Cherokee Nation at this time. By the way, the 1809 Med census is housed at the Moravian Archives in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. This 1819 treaty states, the United States agrees to pay, according to the Treaty of July the 8th, 1870, for valuable improvements on land within the country ceded by the Cherokee, and to allow a reservation of 640 acres, which was 1 square mile, to each head of a family who elects to become a citizen of the United States. There were 91 middle and out town heads of Cherokee household who filed a claim for a 640-acre reservation in order to protect their ancient mounds and towns, such as Gadua, Niquosi, and Cowee. They agreed to submit to the laws of the states, which made them eligible for North Carolina citizenship, and they became known as the Citizen Cherokee. And we'll talk more about that. The state of North Carolina quickly surveyed the ceded lands in preparation of a land sale. And in doing so, they surveyed the 91 middle and out town 640-acre reservations that was awarded to the Citizen Cherokee in the treaty. North Carolina law permitted the white settler purchases of this land to forcefully remove the Citizen Cherokee from their land. It was the purchaser's responsibility. One account of such incident was documented in the 1842 testimony of Gideon Morris, in which he stated that he, Gideon Morris, was compelled to leave home for a short time, leaving his wife and children on the said place. Immediately after he left, his house was attacked by said Robert Love and other persons with him, was torn down and burnt, and his family turned adrift in the cold weather. The whole of his bedding, provisions, and clothing being destroyed by the fire. Gideon Morris and his wife, Naka or Rebecca Katatahi's 640-acre reservation was centered around the old Cherokee town and mound of Niquosi. In August of 1824, North Carolina negotiated with the Citizen Cherokee a contract for payment for their 640-acre reservations and allowing them to settle elsewhere besides their own land. So where did they go? Some of the citizen Cherokee moved to the valley towns, which was still within the bounds of the Cherokee Nation. But most of the citizen Cherokee settled near a site outside of the Cherokee Nation, which was known as Quallatown or Oconaluftee. Let's move on to the nationalist period overview from 1820 to 1835. These Quallatown Indians lived quietly among their few white neighbors, abiding by the laws of the state of North Carolina, and wanted only to be left alone. In 1830, just a year after taking office, President Andrew Jackson pushed a piece of legislation called the Indian Removal Act through both houses of Congress. It gave the president power to negotiate treaties with Indian tribes living east of the Mississippi River. Under these treaties, the Indians were to give up their lands east of the Mississippi in exchange for lands in the west. Before arrangements could be made for immigration, it was necessary to conduct a survey to gather information regarding the Cherokee population and other such matters. What was going to be needed to remove? How many wagons were there? How many people were there? What did they have? What were they going to take with them? So this prelude to the removal was the 1835 Cherokee census authorized by the federal government. According to the census, 3,644 Cherokee were living in North Carolina. And this did include the Cherokee who were living outside the nation in Quallatown. By the way, those of you who are interested in this census, 1835 Cherokee census is commonly referred to as the Henderson Roll. That is just a name that was assigned by some individuals. Every state had its own census taker. Henderson was the census taker for Tennessee. He was the first one to turn his census in. Therefore, it's commonly known as the Henderson Roll, but it is official name is the 1835 census, Cherokee census. The census taker in North Carolina was Nathaniel Smith. He wrote, "I found the balance of these families consisting of 233 souls who left their country and settled among the whites." In this statement, Smith is referring to the citizen Cherokee who had left the Cherokee Nation and settled among the whites in Quallatown as a result of being forced off of their 648 reservations. And the removal period. At the onset of the removal period, the signing of the infamous Treaty of New Echota on December the 25th of 1835. Article 12 of this treaty contains somewhat of a loophole. Those individuals and families of the Cherokee Nation who are adverse to removal to the Cherokee country west of the Mississippi and are desirous to become citizens of the states where they reside and such as are qualified to take care of themselves. Meaning, any Cherokee choosing to remain would have to acquire their own land and otherwise fend for themselves. This loophole would soon aid the North Carolina Cherokee in their opposition to removal. This wraps up our overview of the historical periods leading up to the 5 circumstances that contributed to the nucleus of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians today. I will now cover those in chronological order. The first circumstance is a direct result of the Treaty of 1817 and 1819 discussed earlier. The treaty stated, allow a reservation of 640 acres to each head of a family who elects to become a citizen of the United States. Remember, the state of North Carolina sold the 640-acre reservation claimed by the Cherokee, and the white settlers forced them off their land, with many of them moving to Quallatown outside of the Cherokee Nation. In 1836, Attorney William Holland Thomas agreed to represent the Indians of Quallatown and nearby settlements. He was to inform the federal authority that the citizen Cherokee living in Quallatown outside of the Cherokee Nation intend to stay in North Carolina, and he was to obtain their share of the treaty benefits, because the treaty did not say just those who migrate. The treaty said all Cherokee. Thomas was to keep a percentage as his compensation and then purchase land and other necessities for the Cherokee. Because of the Quallatown Indians' unusual citizenship status, Thomas won recognition of their right both from the United States government officials and the treaty party of the Cherokee Nation. This ensured that they were not legally subject to the forced removal. In September of 1837, 60 Quallatown heads of household and their families, representing 333 Indians, were granted preliminary approval to remain in the East. Now, to summarize this, the Quallatown citizen Cherokee hired William Holland Thomas to go to Washington, tell the federal and government that they intended to stay right where they were, and that he needed to get to their share of the money, and he was to keep some of the money for his services and use the remaining money to purchase land in his name in reserve for these Quallatown citizen Cherokee, because at this time the Cherokee could not purchase land in North Carolina. So the first circumstance contributing to the genesis of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians are the citizen Cherokee. The second circumstance that contributed to the nucleus of the Eastern Band is the North Carolina Cherokee who possessed proper certificates exempting them from removal. When the Army began the forced removal of Cherokee citizens from North Carolina on June 12, 1838, most Cherokees living inside the Cherokee Nation submitted peacefully to arrest and deportation along roads built by the Army. Some families with white members held dual citizenship in North Carolina and the Cherokee Nation and were exempt from removal. An early Cherokee Nation statute passed in 1819 required a white man to get a license from the Cherokee National Clerk to marry a Cherokee woman through a minister or other authorized person before they could be recognized as citizens of the Cherokee Nation. These individuals became known as Cherokee countrymen. In North Carolina, if the head of the household was white, the spouse was Cherokee, the children were mixed blood. The head of the household was 1, a North Carolina citizen. 2, the head of the household could legally hold land in North Carolina. And 3, the entire family was exempt from the Removal Act. Other Cherokees obtained immigration waivers from officials such as Preston Starrett, a federal enrolling agent, who, according to General Eustis, was granting permission to some hundreds of Indians to remain in the country. He had been for several days at Welch's on Valley River, distributing permits to Indians coming from Fort Lindsay and Camp Scott under the charge of the soldiers. The waivers or permits were mostly issued to the old and the sick. Valley River, North Carolina, July 2nd, 1838. Agreeable to the instructions of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, communicated in the foregoing letter, waking an old woman, Edisty her son, and his son Kamasaki, and his wife Anna are permitted to remain and become citizens. The second circumstance contributing to the genesis of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is the exempted Cherokee, and those who are those intermarried families with dual citizenships, and those individuals who were given permits. The third circumstance that contributed to the nucleus of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is the North Carolina Cherokee who were members of Uchula's band. When federal troops and state militia came to the mountains of North Carolina to capture Cherokees in June of 1838, the Cherokee people of Nantahala Town, located in the lower Nantahala River Valley, were one group who lived inside the Cherokee Nation, but did not submit peacefully and fled to the remote mountains. Led by their headman Uchula, the North Carolina Cherokee had evaded troops for months. The army feared that Uchula's band might turn guerrilla warfare, and they returned in September of 1838 to pursue these fugitives. The troops eventually captured dozens of Cherokees, including Uchula's old neighbor, Solly, and his extended family. When Solly, his sons and sons-in-law killed two of their captors and escaped, the military scope intensified. Solly and his band were finally brought into the army camp by other Cherokee, who feared that the manhunt would escalate into a full-scale war against their people. After Solly, his sons, and sons-in-law were executed in late November, Colonel William S. Foster issued a proclamation that granted amnesty to Uchula and his group. Instructions from General Winfield Scott permitted to remain in North Carolina. This document shows the number of and names of Uchula's band permitted to remain in North Carolina to be about 100 Cherokee. And Uchula's band here, and to come up with those 100 Cherokee, I just added up the number in each household. That was on the document. Uchula and his band joined the Quallatown Cherokee and helped establish the Wolftown community, which survives as a modern township today, the county in which I reside. Only Uchula's band directly benefited from the Solly incident. Only Uchula's band. So the third circumstance contributing to the genesis of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is Uchula's band. The fourth circumstance that contributed to the nucleus of the Eastern Band is the North Carolina who did resist removal. By the end of 1838, the majority of Cherokee were already in the West. Those Cherokee who had avoided removal by evading the soldiers in their mountain hideouts were dismissed by the War Department as not worth the trouble and expense to remove, and could remain in their homeland. The soldiers were delighted to retreat from the laurel hills of the Nantahala Mountains. They had been crawling through and trying to round up fugitives for months to no avail. After the military withdrawal, approximately 800 Cherokee resided in and around Quallatown. mostly on property that William Holland Thomas had purchased on their behalf in his name. Another 400 North Carolina Cherokee were scattered. Another 300 North Carolina Cherokee were scattered along the Chioa, Valley, and Hiawassee rivers, making a total of about 1,100 Cherokee remaining in the state. Another 300 or so Cherokee resided in nearby Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. Those included a number of mixed bloods and whites who were Cherokee by marriage only, the Cherokee country. The total number of Cherokee remaining in the Southeast at this time then would have been about 1,400 individuals. So the fourth circumstance contributing to the genesis of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians are those who resisted removal. The fifth circumstance that contributed to the nucleus of the Eastern Band is the North Carolina Cherokee who returned after being removed. Though the exact number remains undocumented of the Cherokee who remained to North Carolina after the forced removal, and that number is still fluid, many family stories have been recorded. In Traditions of Western North Carolina, attorney Theodore F. Davison wrote the following about Old Standing Wolf. We parted with him when he left for the headquarters about the 20th of June, 1838, little thinking we should ever see him again this side of the great day, which alterably fixed for our destinies. But so it was we met him again in August, the same year. The transportation of the Indians would not be continued until October or November in consequence of low water. Having some unsettled business to attend to, I went to the headquarters in August. The settlement of my business was delayed, and I concluded one Sabbath to go out amongst the Cherokee who were encamped some 3 miles from town at a large limestone spring called the Rattlesnake Spring, where I met my old friend Standing Wolf. He saw me, and making his way through the crowd, he seized me by my hand before I saw him. Tears began to flow, and he asked me to remain where I was until he brought his wife to me. I agreed to do so. Meanwhile, falling deep into thought on the scene before me as I looked over the vast assembly then camped in the woods. I was not permitted long to indulge in these reflections, for it seemed but a moment had passed before he returned with his wife by his side. She gave me her hand, and with a downcast look and faltering voice, she said she was glad to see me. Seating themselves under the shade of a tree, the tears rolled thick and freely down the faces of my companions. After some time spent in weeping, she began to relate to me the sad events that she had to encounter since she had left her home in North Carolina. In a few days, I returned to my home then in Haywood County, North Carolina. And I often spoke of Old Standing Wolf and his family, and some 2 or 3 weeks had gone by, and I began to think less often of the great distress of Standing Wolf and his family. When one day my attention was attracted to a company of Indians moving on in the direction of my house. I looked intently at them, thinking the while that there was something that seemed familiar about them. At length, I recognized Old Standing Wolf in the lead. With 17 of his relatives following him, I went out and met him, welcomed them to my house, gave them the best I had to eat. When they consulted what they should do, I advised them to go among his people as many of them were living a short distance off in Qualitown that the government could not remove. And as they had become landowners and were subject to the laws of the state. And he took my advice. Wakey, the wife of Standing Wolf, gave birth to their youngest child during the journey back from Rattlesnake Springs. And appropriately, he was named Comeback Wolf. He went on to serve in the Confederate Army during the Civil War and continued acting as the medicine man for the Big Cove stickball players until his death in 1902. This individual is Jerry Wolf. He is a beloved man of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and he's a direct descendant of Standing Wolf. He is still alive today. Rebecca Wolf, a direct descendant of one of our honored potters. The fifth and final circumstance contributing to the genesis of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians are the individuals who returned to their homeland. This document lists the Qualitown ancestors from which the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians descend, the genesis. And there's my email address if anyone wants to email me for any of the graphics that we have.
Moved. And so they moved here to Weber's Falls. So I have a connection in my heart with Weber's Falls, and I'm glad to be here today. And so I'm happy to present this to the next room at the museum. And you think about Calhoun when you look at it and when anybody comes in to look at it.
On behalf of the Historical Society, we're very thankful. We will hang this in the Hayes room, and Inez will be absolutely delighted. We invite everyone of y'all to come over to the museum after this is over, and we would like to go in and see what we've done. It's been a labor of love. It's all volunteer. So we're just really proud of what the people have accomplished. Thank you.